In the early hours of April 9, 1940, Denmark found itself unexpectedly thrust into the theater of World War II. This date marked the beginning of Operation Weserübung, the German invasion of Denmark and Norway. It was aimed at securing supply lines and outflanking the British naval blockade. Denmark's strategic importance was primarily due to its control of the strait leading to the Baltic Sea. It was a vital passage for German naval operations and iron ore shipments from Sweden. Despite the sudden attack, the Danish army was alerted to the German incursion. At around 4:20 a.m., German forces crossed the Danish border, pushing towards key objectives, including the capital, Copenhagen, and the airfields at Aalborg, crucial for the further invasion of Norway. The Danish Home Guard, along with the regular army, faced an overwhelming adversary. Germany, having mobilized extensively for its Blitzkrieg across Europe, fielded a force significantly superior in numbers, equipment, and preparedness. The Danish military, on the other hand, was modest, comprising approximately of 14,500 active soldiers, 10,000 of whom were conscripts, with a home guard of around 6,600. As the Germans advanced, the Danish forces were ordered to hold them back, though this was more a symbolic gesture than a practical military strategy. Denmark's flat terrain and the element of surprise effectively favored the German forces, making resistance futile in many areas. The disparity in military capability was stark. Denmark had a few dozen artillery pieces, around 50 tanks, which were mostly outdated, and a handful of aircraft that were no match for the Luftwaffe's strength. In contrast, Germany deployed hundreds of tanks and aircraft, showcasing the might of their war machine. Despite the odds, Danish units at the border engaged the Germans, aiming to delay their advance and allow for the mobilization of Danish forces. Skirmishes took place, but without air support or numerical advantage, the Danish forces could not hold back the German tide. In Copenhagen, an attempt was made to resist the German advance, but by 6 a.m., German troops had entered the city, and the Danish government was faced with a critical decision. Given the stark realities on the ground, including the threat of significant civilian casualties from bombings, as explicitly threatened by the Germans, the Danish government chose to surrender by 8:34 a.m., less than 6 hours after the invasion began, on the simple condition that Denmark's political independence would be preserved under the German protection. The rapid capitulation of Denmark was a strategic move that, while effectively ending armed resistance, allowed the country to maintain a degree of autonomy and avoid the widespread destruction suffered by other countries under German occupation. Notably, the Danish king and government remained in the country, symbolizing a unique stance among occupied nations. One poignant example of resistance during these early hours was the Battle of South Jutland, Royal Hussars Barracks in Sonneberg. Despite being heavily outnumbered and outgunned, the Danish soldiers managed to inflict casualties on the German forces, demonstrating their resolve to defend their country. April 9th, 1940. It remains a stark illustration of the overwhelming force employed by Nazi Germany and the Danish response, their unwavering resolve. Ultimately, though, the manner of Denmark's surrender allowed it to preserve some semblance of sovereignty in the face of imminent occupation. These are Interesting Things with JC.